back then we would, like I said, I would just like strike up a conversation with somebody at the sports bar, Willie, who was like watching the game and seemed like they have action on it. You start talking to them, and then, if they seem cool about things, you try to get an account from that person. And yeah, but going that route back then, like we definitely got stiffed several times because, sometimes you don't know who you're dealing with.
Welcome to another episode of the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang, your host, and today I'm thrilled to have Mike Craig and Mark Scalley on the show. These two have had a long time sports betting partnership. In this episode, we talk about how they got started working together and what the betting world was like in 2009. They also talk about how to get sports betting accounts. And then finally, we talk about Origination, whether it's easy, and why no one at Bet Bash was talking about it. The Football Analytics Show is brought to you by the Power Ranks Sports Betting newsletter. This is a free service that gives data-driven betting information that strives to be three things. 1, valuable. 2, concise. 3, entertaining. Smarter sports betting in under 5 minutes. This is unsolicited feedback on the newsletter. Quote, "This newsletter is one of my must-read things that I actively look forward to reading as soon as I see it. It's just the right length with the right amount of information. A timeless classic." End quote. That was from Joe G. To get this free service, go to thepowerrank.com. That is my site for sports betting information based on data and analytics. Once again, that's thepowerrank.com. Joining me on this episode of the Football Analytics Show are Mark Scalley and Mike Craig. They have been betting partners for a long time. Mark and Mike, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Ed. Thank you for having us on, and I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast.
I'm honored to have you. So,
yeah, thank you very much.
So first up, I want to get into your story, Mark. This is your first appearance on the show. How did you get into sports betting and working with Mike?
Well, I guess I've always kind of been fascinated with gambling in general, but especially sports betting. I had moments when I thought maybe I was decent at poker, but I'm really not, and I kind of figured that out. But even like in high school, like I started to, do like the football pools that you get at the barbershop and things like that. And then I worked in a restaurant where, there was a guy there taking bets. And I was just kind of fascinated by the concept that you could just place a bet on a game. And if you were right, you got money for it. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, what if I can, I guess a lot of people kind of have that dream when they start betting. They think like, they're going to win, blah, blah, blah. But no, I didn't win right away. It took a long time, but I was always betting, having fun, tried to stay within my means and that kind of stuff.
When was the bookie in the restaurant? How old were you?
I was like 16, 17 years old.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. And this guy was like taking bets from, whoever, anyone there, or maybe some customers too. Like he was like an old school guy, like, phone call in and you have like a password or whatever. Like that was,
this probably predates internet betting.
Yes, it does. Yep.
That's awesome. Okay.
So then I met Mike in college, and I guess he had like some similar introductions to sports betting when he was in high school. And, that was like one of the things that we had in common, and we became friends during our college years.
Awesome. Is that how you remember it too, Mike?
Yeah. We had some, actually, Mark was in a fraternity with a couple guys I went to high school with, so that's kind of how we met. After college, I ended up working a normal job, and then I ended up traveling out to Philly a lot. And Mark was living out there, so we would spend a lot of time together when I would travel out that way. And we always stayed in touch through the years and everything. But when I would go out there, we'd always hang out and drink and talk about gambling. So at some point we just decided let's combine forces here and see what we can do together. That was probably 2009 ish,
Yeah.
2008, 2009. I think it was
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah, I would say it was like 2009. But even like a couple years prior to that, we were both doing like following Dr. Bob and like some of these other services that we would sign up for, and trying to just scrape together a little bit of a bankroll here and there. I don't think in the year like 2006, 2007, for example, I don't think I thought it was realistic that I was going to be doing this professionally anytime like really soon. But then in 2009, I guess when we joined forces is when we started to maybe get a little more serious about it and realize that we could take it to the next level. It's probably right around that time.
And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean taking it to the next level?
I guess for me, it meant that this could be my main source of income. Like I didn't think. I mean, I always like had that dream that maybe it was going to happen, but I didn't really think it was that realistic. Probably until around 2009. It was probably like once Mike started. I'll probably call him Craig sometimes and Mike sometimes, but either way, once Mike
We'll
started,
figure out who you're talking about.
yeah. Probably like once you started like originating stuff like college basketball. And I remember like one time you called me or texted me early in the morning, like in 2000. It was probably like, it might have been like early 09, like that college basketball season, like end of 08 into 09. And you were like, here's like 5 college basketball totals that I think are going to move. And this was at like 9 in the morning, and like Boston College under and like 4 other ones. And I wrote them all down. And then I just like forgot about it for a couple hours, and I checked it at like, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock that night. And I was like, man, he got crazy line moves on like all of these. I was like, what the hell is going on? And I guess that's when you had started to model and to, you wanted to start originating. But I mean, you can speak to that a little bit better, I guess.
Yeah, tell us about that, Mike.
Well, I mentioned on your podcast last time, like I was involved with everything, and when I say we, I guess I would buy Dr. Bob, like I don't know, maybe starting in 2002 or 3 or 4, somewhere in that range. And Dr. Bob had like a monster year. The one year, I think it was '05. I think like on his 3 starts, it was like 23-2. And I always thought like. I would like to. What if something happens to Dr. Bob? Like, uh, like how am I going to win? And
So what was your tentative plan for a brief moment there?
I think at one point I said I was going to buy life insurance on Dr. Bob or something.
Just in case something happened to him, he wanted to make sure he had himself covered.
And this is back when Dr. Bob, like, it wasn't like it was a race to the number. Like Dr. Bob would release, and I think maybe in 2005 he started moving lines at release. But I always kind of, I always wanted to learn how to originate. I thought I had the capability to do it, and I talked about it before. Someone introduced me to Ken Palm, and I did some stuff with the Ken Palm things. I read basketball on paper. I thought I had enough of a basis to, once I had those things, to start doing things on my own. And I started with WNBA, college hoops. Well, college hoops, I was doing Ken Palm. Then that summer I looked into WNBA, like doing things truly from scratch from a box score. And I did really well my first WNBA year. And just as I went, we did a lot of baseball team totals. Back then were really good for us. Props were really good for us at the beginning. So we kind of started with smaller stuff and worked our way up and added different and new things to the repertoire every year, I guess you'd say. And I think when we came together, it's kind of like we didn't have very many accounts on our own. And I mean, now we have way more accounts than we had back then. But we probably each had like 8 or 10 accounts at the time, and we're like, oh well, if we combine them, and combined, we're probably betting, I don't know, 1,000 a game at the most in 2009, I'd say. So they've come a long way since then, and yeah,
that was also like the first time that we ever heard of credit shops, right? I mean, I don't know if it existed much prior to 2009, but like we didn't have any. Nobody was, giving us like a PPH type off screen like credit out, like that never happened. But then in 2009, 2010, you're like, wow, hold on, we have like some of these people we're getting accounts from some people, and that enables you to kind of have a more of a theoretical bankroll with what you're playing with. You're not just like posting up every single dollar that you're betting with. Now you can bet on credit. Like that really expands what you can do and like what you can get pending on a given night or a given week. So that was also happened at that same time, at least for us it did. So that was like part of the equation.
Yeah, and that was kind of you. Like in Philly, like you can go to like a bar and be like, "Hey, can I get an account?" And the bartender's like, "Yeah, sure. What do you need?"
That used to that did used to happen sometimes. That was like back in those days. I haven't done that kind of thing in a long time, but back then, yeah, that definitely happened a few times.
That's awesome. So actually, let's back up a little bit here because I wanted to bring you guys on to talk about the aspect of getting accounts, right? So it's 2009, and you're saying this is kind of the first time you could go online and get accounts with credit. Is that exactly what you're saying, Mark?
It was more like you met someone who was an agent, is what they would often say, but they were more just like a bookie or a friend of a bookie who had like what they call a PPH or like a credit out. And
what does PPH stand for?
Pay per head. It just means like that the person who's running that book has to pay the website, a certain amount of dollars for each client that they have.
Right. And then the website
does all the grading of the bets and the line moves and all that kind of stuff. So like the old school, like call in bookies on the phone that I talked about from high school, like they decided to start going this route, which is more like have somebody else do a lot of the work, like the grading and all that kind of stuff. But they were they were still the ones responsible for settling up, the money. Like you had to meet up with somebody and pay or collect.
So yeah, paper it's just like paying for the software at whatever.
Yeah.
15 bucks an account per week or something. Yeah, I'm just throwing a number out there. I don't know. I'm sure people get better deals than that. I'm sure people get worse, but that might be like a average for a smaller bookie to pay $15 a week per head. So if they had 10 clients, they'd get 10 accounts set up and it'd be $150 a week.
Okay, so it's 2009, and like, what is this? All your accounts are like this at that point?
Well, we're still playing at offshores, and Chris and I guess Pinnacle wasn't around. We probably had
5 Times was big back then, like Bet Online. I mean, Bet Online, they've been around forever. Like we still use them. Sportsbook.com was a big one back then. Bodog, Bovada, whatever you want to call it. Like all those like offshore, the Costa Rica offshore places like that you could post up money at.
The Greek, Bet Jamaica, WWTS, WSCX, that might be a little before 2009, but I feel like those are the places I was playing. Bodog, those are the places I was playing. You had SIA too for your square.
Oh yeah, Sports Interaction was like a candy store that was super easy to win at.
So 2009, kind of what is what fraction of your account, or maybe what fraction of your bets are you putting on these offshores versus some of these more domestic people that you're betting into?
I mean, it wasn't that far off of like 50-50. Maybe there was maybe a little bit more that we were posting up offshore, I guess. Just because
I was going to say we probably had more offshore. We probably had more offshore because we were still new to the credit game, and I mean. Yeah. I don't think that's when like credit books popped up or anything. I think that's when we were just first exposed to them. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to the Spankies and Brunos of the world, I'm sure that they could tell you when it actually started.
So for these kind of credit post ups, right? These are the people that you meet that are using the software, paying someone else to use the software. How does that work in the sense of like, how do you build trust in this person, right? How do you decide that this person is someone you want to do business with?
Yeah, that's a really good question because back then we would, like I said, I would just like strike up a conversation with somebody at the sports bar in Philly who was like watching the game and seemed like they have action on it. You start talking to them and then, if they seem cool about things, you try to get an account from that person. And yeah, but going that route back then, like we definitely got stiffed several times because, sometimes you don't know who you're dealing with. But then, over the course of time, you kind of like whittle it down to like a few, I'll say sub agents for lack of a better word, or agent, whatever you want to call them. And that person will kind of go out and do all that dirty work of like finding the accounts at the bars or finding the accounts from wherever. Some people have a lot of connections. Some people are just know a lot of people. Some people, they know some guy who bets on Wall Street and all of a sudden you got this big account from New York or something like that. Like that kind of stuff happens. But so we're not like meeting up with each individual person running the PPH. We meet up with like a middleman who then he might meet up with 10 or 12 other guys. And then we narrowed it down to maybe like 3 or 4 of those guys that we really trusted, who we could carry a bigger balance with. And they would, a lot of times, like the term like guaranteeing the money would go around. Like, well, is this guy going to guarantee the money? And like for the most part, if we, the people that we dealt with, these agents or sub agents, like you didn't have to worry about it that much. Like they might even just eat the stiff sometimes because they were making money off the accounts too. They would like take a percentage of the overall thing. They might say, here's 10 accounts, you get 40% of each one of them. Well, where does the other 60 go? Like, well, that's, I'm not privy to that information, but they do something with it,
Wait. So what's the cut of this middle person that is introducing you to these other books?
They might be like, well, I get it from my buddy and he's taking 20 and he gets it from his buddy. And he's, all of a sudden there's like 50 to 60% of it is like cut out of your part. And now you're left with like 40.
So is that cut out of your profit or is that cut out of all bets?
The guys that we dealt with would usually take it like win or loss. They would be like, if we had a losing week or month, then they would lose alongside with us. And if we win, then they would win alongside with us.
Okay. So that kind of takes another level of trust too, right? Because they're incentivized for you to win, right?
Yep. This whole concept is like what people refer to as betting partners now on Twitter. Like a lot of people say like, oh, I'm looking for new betting partners. Like this is kind of what I'm describing,
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So
that makes a ton of sense.
Like you said, do you have a rapport with a bookie? I don't there's not one bookie I deal with directly. I deal with middle people who get the accounts. And like Mark said, if they get stiffed, the money's supposed to be guaranteed. And it is with the people we deal with. So.
Right. So it's kind of, so today, 2022, people go to Bet Bash. Everyone's looking for accounts. People even show up with shirt that says "Get accounts," got accounts.
I thought
was hilarious.
That's awesome. I didn't see that person.
Oh yeah, he was a trip.
Yeah.
So the wonders of speed networking.
Yeah.
Shout out to Spanky there. But so it sounds like nowadays a lot of people have accounts. They have domestic legal accounts from all the big players. And those are kind of the accounts that you're getting now. It sounds like it was the same concept back in 2009. It's just the bookie was different.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah. I think that a lot of the people at Bet Bash still use those credit accounts that I just described, but they also use the new legal regulated books as well. They kind of mix both of them into what they do.
Okay.
I would imagine so.
So it's kind of coming, further to when everything was legalized in the U.S. It's almost like the legalization just gave you guys a way to find more outs, right? Through these betting partnerships. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. The first thing we did was open up all these accounts under our own names just to make it kind of straightforward and clear that we just wanted to do it that way at first. And then, we're in Pennsylvania. If I get backed off or my limits get slashed at some of these accounts, then, I could actually drive over to New Jersey and there's some of these books where it's I can open up the same one over in Jersey and I get good limits again, at least to start, which is crazy, but it's the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Or you can go to the kiosk, you can go to the actual book itself if that exists, depending on, in Jersey, they don't all have a physical presence. Some of them are just online, but there's ways around it. Even if I open up an account under my own name and it gets flagged, then, like I said, you go to the kiosk, you go to New Jersey, you go to Atlantic City, there's other ways around it too, just to do that under my own name.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So even back in 2009, you guys are saying you each have about 10 accounts, and it seems like it's just a matter of kind of networking in order to get more accounts. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I think so. 2009, I think that's the year I started working with Edward and Raz. So I was both of us were pretty green. So, I'm kind of learning as I'm going there, and I'm seeing things they're doing and just basically opened my eyes to a lot of things. The way people were doing things, because all that was kind of new at the time for me and us.
So, can we expand on the way people were doing things there,
I
Mike?
mean, just the way the networks get built out, and how you have people that are from this city that are getting you stuff, and that city that are getting you accounts and guaranteeing money, and um, coordinating betting, things like that. So, yeah, just to the per head stuff in general. I hadn't had exposure to it, and or much exposure to it, and I didn't realize how people were sort of stacking accounts through multiple guys, and doing that kind of thing. And I wasn't big enough. I wasn't big at the time either, so all that was new. Just seeing how a bigger operation was working like that.
So, what do you mean by stacking accounts?
I mean, that's not like a term that I know of. I just meant like, getting 8 accounts from a guy in Jersey and 16 accounts from a guy in California, and just having multiple places to bet the same thing to get more money down.
Oh, right. Okay. So getting more accounts so you can get
Yeah.
down more.
Yep.
So how did your number of accounts kind of grow over the years as you guys worked on your betting partnership?
I think for me, at least, I think, just being with Raz gave me a credibility that I probably didn't have. And I was posting some stuff on forums. So I actually met a few people in 2009, not through Raz, that I still work with to this day. I don't know. We keep saying 2009. In the 2008 to 2011 range, I met someone from the Northeast, and then someone from down south that I still keep in touch with today and do things with. So it's just a gradual thing. I mean, everything takes time in this business. I think a lot of people want to rush to things or think things are going to happen quickly, and it takes time to build relationships and trust. It's probably less time now than back then. I think now, I said to someone recently, like, if you screw anyone over now that has a reputation in this business, everybody knows each other now. Like, it wasn't like that in the past. So in the past, I think there was more of it took more time to build trust and build relationships. And I think as you did that, you branched out and got to know more people. And that's kind of when we started. I mean, Ed, I don't know what year I met you. Maybe it was 10 or 11, I'd say.
I think we decided one year was 2012 that we first met at the Sloan.
I don't think conference. It was 12. I think it was before that, but I'm not positive. I would guess 11. But either way, I think Sloan. I know, Mark and I used to try. We used to buy the suites for the Celtics games and try to get all the gamblers together.
It was incredible.
It was a fun time.
Yeah, I think that helped, and you just. I always say, if you go to one of those conferences or networking events and you meet one person, like, it's worth it. And every year I went, I met at least one person that I still deal with to this day. So,
well, I mean,
absolutely.
You guys. All right, we need to be real about what you guys did. You guys got a suite at a Celtics game, provided food and drink. So I would think one is like the bare minimum of people that you would meet going through that exercise.
A good valuable contact that we wanted.
A new person, though.
Yeah,
most of the people we knew already. So, I worked for Sports Insights for a few years. I met Dan at Dan Fabrizio at that conference. I met Rufus at that conference, and Mark actually met a couple of Rufus's partners that brought him into the business. So we knew them before we knew Rufus. I kind of met Rufus randomly at one of these.
Didn't you guys run into each other like at the bar in the Hilton or something?
Yeah, I don't remember what hotel it was, but I remember I was drinking. I went down by myself. It was the first night I was there, and I drank a few beers. I was talking to this guy about he was into physical therapy or something. And he was a nice guy, but I was relatively disinterested. And then a guy sat down next to me and started talking to him. It was Rufus. He said, I bet on sports. I said, what do you bet? He said, golf, NASCAR. And I said, Zach and Mark. And he was like, hold on. What's going on here? And that we knew a couple of people that he was partners with. So, yeah, it was very random.
That's very random, but it also shows like what a small world it is in some sense, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
And yeah, when we used to go to Sloan, I mean, there wasn't many of us there, and then I stopped going for a few years because it used to be like Dan, Gil, you, me.
Right.
Uh,
Scally came a couple years too.
Yeah, I came a couple times too. Yeah.
I mean, one of my buddies from Boston would stop down sometimes. There was a lot of people. I hate to try to name everybody because I know I'll forget someone. But then I stopped going for a few years, and then I came back, and then you kind of reintroduced me to the new crowd that was going, which was like Pizzola and I don't know who else, but I remember you introduced me to Rob and
Well,
a
and
few.
then when Spanky started showing up, I think I introduced you to him, right? Or were you there that first year?
That
Yeah,
was
you
the
were there the first year.
right?
He was.
I was not there the first year Spanky was there. I met Spanky. That was the COVID year I met
Oh, the
Spanky.
COVID
We got,
year.
we got COVID together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I ran into Rufus. The first people, I didn't even tell anyone I was going that year. I ran into Rufus and Rob were the first people I saw. And then we went down to the bar. Then I ran into a friend from the Midwest that introduced me to Spanky.
So would you guys say that, I mean, they sometimes say that your net worth is your network of people that you know. Would you say that that's also true in the sports betting world, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to just like touch upon like a question you asked a few minutes ago uh, about like you developing trust with these people and stuff like that. Because this really goes hand in hand with what Mike was just talking about. Like, how do you like build this trust? Like, I feel like Mike and I are, we're pretty good at like we like to hang out and have a good time and like get a suite at the Celtics game and like play blackjack and like even if we're just like we're not expecting to win at the tables, like we like to like hang out and have fun and have a good time. And anytime that like we do start to work with somebody or have like a new betting partnership or whatever it might be, like we don't want that to just be like we're robots and we bet and we collect and then we pay and then it's like it's not just all about business. Like we like to like have fun and like I think that first of all it makes what we do more fun and enjoyable, and second of all it develops trust a lot too. Like all the stuff that Mike was just describing, like we're not just like robots behind the computer screen. Like we want like if we like met, some of the guys we met at Bet Bash, for example, like, I'm looking forward to hanging out with them again. Like, I want to like plan trips to wherever, Atlantic City, Vegas, whatever it might be. Like I think that stuff's really important. Yeah. Even if you're like sitting at the blackjack table, like, with like negative EV because you're drunk and really not, paying attention to the count or anything like that. Like who cares? Like you're having fun. And that's just like part of the whole business. I think at least for us, I think it's benefited us.
Yeah, Mike, would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Well, like some of these new guys aren't in like, well, maybe not as degenerates like we can be sometimes. They're like, well, like let's play by the book, and I'm not going to play any game unless it's plus EV, and I'm not going to like drink too much. But Mike and I like to have a good time.
Wait, there's someone in the betting world that doesn't drink that much. Is that? I have not yet met that person.
I don't feel like I don't feel like some of the younger people party as much as the older guys. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but it seems like more business. And I mean, like Mark, like we like to drink, and we and
That's a good time.
we like to binge drink specifically. Like it just happens, and I just like I love hanging out with people who yeah just like to hang out, like not just talk about betting the whole time, but like hang out and like Mark said,
have some good food.
Yeah, it builds it just builds the relationship. I know I feel like there's one guy, I won't say his name, but the first night I ever met him, I met him in Vegas, and we had done some stuff. We settled up, and we went to dinner, and we had way too much to drink, and we rolled dice, and like after that day, like we've been boys for forever, and I think we will be. And I don't know, it just sometimes you click with people, and it helps when you can. I don't know if it helps when you have common interests and you're both and you both like to do the same things and get.
And they're gonna want to maybe deal with us over somebody else because they have like positive memories of hanging out with us, and they're like, oh, this guy's great. I'm gonna give him some whatever beneficial information or whatever it might be to help him out, and when we reciprocate the same thing to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, Mike, I was talking to a friend here, and I was telling him about how we were starting to work more together on the betting side of things, and kind of the money details behind that. And at some point, he's like, "Well, are you worried that he's going to stiff you?" And I was like, "There's zero chance in hell that Mike Craig will
Yeah.
ever stiff me." And
Yeah.
I know that because we've hung out a lot. Like, we have a rapport, right? And part of that is drinking way too much at some points in some of these conferences over the years, right? But
Absolutely. Yeah.
when I think about this, right? I was an Asian kid growing up in Pennsylvania, and my parents are fantastic, but they were always like, "Oh, you got to study hard and get good grades," and it just blows me away, like how little that matters compared to like kind of dumb stuff, like hanging out with people late into the night, and just the kind of things that you're talking about, Mark, like just being friendly and not just wanting to have like a business relationship with someone, just wanting to have fun with people. And that, seems to be a very important I mean, it's been a very important part of how I built kind of my work in the sports betting world.
Yeah.
It
It
sounds
makes
like
it
it's been
more
really
enjoyable.
important for you guys too.
Absolutely.
And I think, like, from a career perspective or whatever, outside, I mean, we're not just talking about betting here, but the most successful people from a financial perspective are people that are well connected. It's not about brains and going in and sitting in an office all day long. People who make the most money typically are very well connected socially.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I would completely agree with that. I mean, we've seen Spanky kind of take that to the next level in terms of just it's not good enough to just go to Sloan and meet people. Like, he had to organize his own conference, right?
Right.
Which is an incredible platform for a lot of us to meet new people. But I'm sure he benefited maybe the most, right?
I would think so. I mean, we had a great time out there, and we met some people, and we definitely benefited from it without a doubt. I mean, it worked out great for us, and it was an awesome conference. But yeah, I can't imagine how much Spanky must have benefited from it, which deserves that because he put it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys talked about how these days it's harder to stiff someone because if you stiff one person, or you have to be more ethical because if you stiff one person, then everyone's going to know. I mean, how much do you think that's just kind of? I guess I want to ask, how much do you think like social media is a part of that? Just because kind of everyone knows everyone on Twitter, whereas Twitter was maybe more of a new thing in 2009 to 2011. Or actually, wait, did Twitter exist in 2009?
Yeah, that's when we opened our accounts.
That's when we all signed
Okay.
up. Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't the
No, it isn't.
cultural force that it is today, right?
I think a lot more people are comfortable talking about being in the business now that it's legal everywhere, with the regulation and legalization, like people that wouldn't have advertised what they did 5 or 10 years ago and now are more comfortable with it. So, and then, people are coming out of the woodwork, and they, whether they're posting something online or Twitter, or if they're attending events like Bet Bash and places like that. Yeah. I mean, the community has kind of, it's definitely grown, but it's also like, yeah, people have kind of showed up that were quiet in the past, and now like everyone's kind of like talking more, and they're more well connected, and you can everybody kind of knows who everybody else is for the most part.
And the
Yeah, and
legality.
Mark, we got you to talk on this podcast, so I think
That's true. Yeah, I was one of the people who like didn't really talk about it a whole lot.
If Zach White and Mark DeRosa can be on podcasts, so can Mark Scalley. But I think the legal aspect of all this, though, too, like you talk about Twitter being different. A lot of that now is the younger guys don't know the days of you kept your mouth shut on everything. Like 2009, you couldn't be wide open and out in the open with stuff like this. Like now, everything's legal, so it's much easier to talk about things. There's not the stigma or I don't know how you want to describe it. There's not like taboo like it was in the past. So that opened up Twitter a lot too. I think for everything to just be out there more than it was in the past. Like I think it's crazy. Like when somebody finds something on Twitter now that, like, if I found it, I would never say a word. Like something they found that's unique and they could win money off it, and they just share it with the world, and it makes no sense to me. But I mean, that's kind of the world we live in. A lot of these, well, I don't want to. it appears to me that a lot of people are more in it for recognition rather than actually trying to make money.
I would certainly say that's true. I think there's a lot of people out there just, I don't really want to talk too much about the pick industry, but, a lot of people are clearly people want picks out there. They want something to bet on, they get excited about. And there's a lot of people that are just putting that stuff out for free on Twitter to get recognition.
Yeah, and I don't know if they think it's going to lead to something. It's not. Bets the bet stamp where you can pay for picks on there. I know there's guys making good money on there, but it's not as easy. It's not really as easy as people think because it's always what have you done for me lately. So as soon as you go on a bad run, you're kind of forgotten. I think.
And bad runs are inevitable. So
yeah, and then that person might pop up under like a different name somewhere else and try to just do the same thing and post picks, incognito somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. So Twitter has certainly kind of brought, I don't know, Twitter is certainly a cesspool, especially in the sports betting world, but it's also kind of brought people together. So is it ultimately a good thing for sports betting? Mike?
Yeah. Why not? I'm of the opinion of whether you're using Twitter to try to make money or to get recognition. Everybody has different goals. I'm not going to judge anyone for their goals if they're different from mine. I think if you wanted to get in this business, there's certainly like back in 2000. I got recognized for posting on forums. So that was kind of how sports betting, there wasn't a gambling Twitter back then. So it was, you kind of posted on Twitter and you hope someone noticed you. So it's a lot easier to get noticed. It's a lot easier to, you create multiple Twitter handles. If you do shitty on one, you just start another one and try to start from scratch and start over. So, I think there's a lot of there's not as many sharp people out there as it appears, in my opinion. But
that's for sure true. Who's posting their losses?
Well,
not many people.
So the original question is gambling Twitter good for gambling? Is it good to have it out there? It is. But I think the problem is that someone who's trying to get into the sports betting space or someone who wants to learn about it, it's very difficult for a beginner to tell what's sharp and what's not on Twitter. And there's really no way for them to know where to go to learn or what's really truly good. And I think that's the...
Well, let's enlighten people. Mike, how do you tell if someone's sharp? Not on Twitter, but just like, how did you know that I was worth talking to in 2011?
I didn't. There's no way for me to know. I'll talk to anybody. So do I think you were sharp when I talked? Probably not. But we had some commonalities, and we both have the same degree and everything. So, we ended up talking, but I think, how does a beginner, for me, it would be easy to know if someone's sharp or not, but for a beginner, I think that's where it becomes difficult because they don't have the knowledge or the experience that I have. I would say.
Okay. So now how do you tell if someone's sharp?
I would say beginners.
I can answer that if you want. In my opinion, I think so. I go on Twitter. A lot of the value that I get out of the sports betting community on Twitter is stuff from like Captain Jack talking about this is going to happen in Pennsylvania soon, or this can happen in New Jersey, just the industry as a whole, or this, the score bet got bought out by Barstool or whatever it might be. That kind of stuff is interesting to me. So it's not like I'm going on Twitter for picks necessarily. That's probably a small percentage of what I do on Twitter, like gambling Twitter, or just to read about Rufus's thought process on whatever he has, what he thinks about a golf tournament or whatever. Just, maybe I'm just kind of it's not just about like cut and dry, like here's your picks, go bet the picks. If I want that, I go to Betstamp. I think Betstamp is a lot easier to kind of determine like, all right, is this guy worth following or not? They have a track record. I mean, you can go look back and see what the closing line value is, see what the ROI is. I mean, I think that's an excellent product for anybody who's looking to try to tail somebody for picks. Twitter is a little bit more vague as far as that whole thing is concerned. I would go to Betstamp for that.
Yeah, well, in Betstamp, you just have their record, right? So
yeah, I mean, it has record ROI and
you do get an ROI because record can be misleading because if you lay 100 baseball favorites at minus 150 on average, you should hit close to 60%. Like that looks great at minus 110. It's phenomenal.
Right.
But at Betstamp, you get an ROI, so that's telling you. I mean, that's essentially telling you what kind of plays they're putting through. Like if someone hits 70% and their ROI is negative 1%, then they're just laying 300 over and over again. So they're going to have a good record. And then you get the CLV number too from Betstamp. So those are the things. And, you said in terms of someone who's giving out picks on.
No, just I don't, Mike, the question isn't about picks necessarily. It's just the more, I mean, you were talking about a beginner and going on Twitter and figuring out who to follow, like what kind of advice would you give that person? I guess I would say like, I rely on people that I trust, like you guys, like Rob Pizzola. If they will speak highly of someone, and I guess that's kind of unfair because I get this in personal conversations, right? So that's not exactly.
Yeah, but if those people say that somebody else is sharp, then I think it's a pretty fair statement to assume that they are sharp. If the people that you just mentioned, if they say, "Hey, this guy's sharp," then I'm gonna believe that.
I think that's true, but I guess I'm just saying like that's not publicly available information. Like I think about it,
I guess not. So as we're talking about this, I think if you're relying on Twitter to educate you about sports betting, you're probably in trouble. Right. Can I? That's my synopsis. Because it's difficult. If someone was a beginner, I would tell them to listen to podcasts, Spanky for stories, Pizzola for information. Yours is good. I would have them listen to a couple other ones too. I just listen to people who've done this for a lot of years and have succeeded. And I like how Rob Pizzola is on Circles. And I shouldn't just say Rob. Johnny and Rob are putting on like some of these up and coming guys like Clive Bixby. They had him on, and they had that Telemachus on. So I like that they're kind of giving these other younger guys a platform who've proven themselves to be known. I think it's awesome.
Who was the second guy that you guys mentioned?
Telemachus or Telemachus? I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's Telemachus.
He's a successful college basketball handicapper.
He kept some college hoops totals last year. Actually,
it always amazes me, like some of the guys on Twitter who are like pretty successful at this, who have only been doing it for like a year or two. I mean, man, like I had to like really like pay my dues for like years and years, and like, take some serious lumps, and then like. Certain people are like, oh, I just started this like a year ago and like, look at my record. I'm like, holy crap. Like, how did that just happen? But I think those people are few and far between, but they do exist for sure.
Well, and you're only seeing a year. So let's see what we think about in a couple of years as well. Right?
Yeah, I think, the two I mentioned, I've actually interacted with both of them, talked to one, message with another one. I can say that I do think they'll succeed long term, both of them.
Right. And that's just from the quality of the things that they're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one for me, right? Like, I mean, are you making intelligent, preferably quantitatively backed statements? I think that's a big thing for sorting through my Twitter feed and good information.
I think if any of us, when we meet somebody in person and we're face to face and we start talking about sports betting, any of us can kind of tell rather quickly if they have a clue or not. Like some people claim that they do, and then you start talking to them, you're like, oh boy, like this is not going anywhere. Like this person just like, blowing smoke. Like they're not, it's in person. Now Twitter is like a little bit more difficult to decipher that kind of stuff, but when you meet somebody in person, it's like hard to hide that if you're really an actual square.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you guys told us a lot about getting accounts kind of early in your guys' career, working together. Do you think things have changed lately, or is it the same ideas of making connections and finding people that you trust?
Yeah, I mean that's always going to be very beneficial to have those connections and trusting people. But yeah, the biggest change obviously is the legalization everywhere and the ability to go bet at a kiosk or on an app and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's been very helpful for us as a whole. The fact that legalization has occurred and that we live in a state that's very good for that, and right next door to another state that's maybe the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, anything to add?
No, I think 2017 and 18 weren't great years for us. And I think part of that was just nothing had been legalized yet, and I mean we were starting to get drier with account availability and the paperhead stuff. So I think the whole legalization really created a new era of opportunity, I guess you would say. And I know we did really well. I think Sugar House was the first book in PA that went live, and we did really well with them right off the bat. And these books are learning on the fly, to put it lightly.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of things that I thought we did a pretty good job taking advantage of early on. And I think you had a longer leash. And this is 2019 and 20 when all these books became legal here. I think it was a longer leash in those couple of years than it is. I don't even think. I know it was a longer leash at that point. So you had more leeway to take them for a little more than you can right now.
Right. So, and that's the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about. A lot of books are shutting off sharp bettors like you guys. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins literally said that explicitly this week on a call with investors. And from what you're saying, Mike, it sounds like they are shutting down people faster. But what has it been like for you guys with these domestic sports books in terms of getting cut off?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when that happens. But yeah, it's happening to a lot of sharps. I will give like one or two examples though that I was thinking about. That's kind of interesting with like when these books limit you. So I've had a couple situations where the Pennsylvania books will limit me to like $100, $200, which is like kind of worthless, but it's not like $4.12. It's like $100.
Sure.
I have one right now. It's $100 and everything. So my initial thought is like, what's the point? Just get rid of it. It turns out, like I realized like a month or two ago, I'm like, they're taking $100 on every market, baseball, basketball. But then I tried to golf outright, and they took $100 on that. Guys like 100 to 1 odds. Now, like that one pays 10 grand as opposed to $90.90.
Wow.
So then I'm like, well, let me try this again in like 5 minutes or whatever, 2 minutes, and they let me bet it again and again and again. So now all of a sudden, this account that I thought was like completely worthless, I've got $300 or $400 on some guy at 100 to 1 odds, that could win 30, 40 grand. So it's like,
right.
When you do get limited, I don't always just like trash these accounts like immediately and just get rid of them. Like I kind of keep them around a little bit, and you never know. Like that happened with the Betfred account in Pennsylvania. Like it was a similar situation. It was down like 100, $200. And then NBA preseason, we're following somebody on BetStamp who's super sharp with NBA preseason. And I'm trying to bet this like anywhere that I can because it's hard to bet NBA preseason. And I go to this Betfred place, which is it's called Wind Creek in Pennsylvania. And my limits had been like, they've been like $50, $100, but I kept a few $100 in there for whatever reason. And I risked like the whole thing on one NBA preseason game and they took it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I deposited more. Turns out there, for whatever reason, there's like I don't know if it's like a glitch or what, but they're taking like $1,000 on an NBA preseason game. And every other market was like $100. It's just odd, weird stuff like that does happen sometimes where I'm just like, I would just check it periodically. Like that's definitely the exception and not the rule. But I've had experiences like that where I'm like, holy crap, like why this account was like done. And now like I found this market where I can actually bet there,
I mean, it's just a software glitch, I would presume. Like they didn't think to limit every single market that you could bet.
Yeah, they must have just thought when they limited me, maybe NBA preseason wasn't even like an option to limit that. So they just that somehow flew under the radar. But you can also keep those accounts around for round robins and stuff like that too. I mean, you can, if it's now again, this isn't the account that is like the MGM that's like $4.10. This is like $100, which there's several Pennsylvania and Jersey accounts that will limit you to like $100, and those are the examples that I'm speaking on right now. But yeah, if you can round robin, like if you have like 10 different legs in a round robin and you do it by threes, fours, fives, sixes, or whatever, and you have like, if you feel like you have a pretty big edge on these bets, then that round robin can pay a pretty good amount, and they will oftentimes take like $100 per bet on that. Which
you're just talking about parlaying together 3 games and then betting every combination of 3 games that you feel like you have an edge in.
Yeah, that's just like something you could do with an account that's flagged. That could be one way to continue to use it if you wanted to.
There's a site called Unibet, and they limited me to like $40 a game, and then I was like, well, I'll just go in and I'll throw a round robin in, and I put 6 teams in, and I thought they were pretty good plays, and they let me bet. It wasn't huge, but it was, I don't know, the round robin paid out like 15 or something like that. So
15-1, yeah.
Yeah, and I had 6 for 6. So you take them for. And then I was completely done after that. But you withdraw it and move on.
One way to kick them one more time on the way out.
A lot of times live betting limits.
Oh yeah, that's a good example too. I have that one Pennsylvania account that's completely flagged on every market, and it's been that way for a while. Except I can live bet like whatever I want there. It's crazy. I can live bet.
What?
Yeah. It's one of the Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's one of the Pennsylvania books. I mean, if I bet like, let's just say NBA, for example, NBA before the game starts, it might be like 50. It's not like $2. It's like, I don't know, $80 or $100. It's low. And WNBA might be like $20. As soon as that game starts and it goes live, I can bet 2 dimes on it. No problem. And I can do it again a minute later. I'll bet live betting 2 dimes again. So this is another example of what I was saying. Like when an account goes, when you get flagged, like you're not always flagged in every single aspect of it, And this has gone on for like the one that I'm talking about with live betting. I mean, it went on the whole entire football season, and I was doing well there live betting, and they never slashed my limits.
That's really interesting.
You just kind of look for those things, and occasionally you don't. Yeah, I wouldn't expect to find them, but you never know. It's worth checking for.
For sure. Have you guys ever found in these flagged accounts, like maybe the $100 accounts, maybe the $4 limits, that you can actually move the market there by making a bet?
It's a great question.
Making that small bet.
Craig, have you seen that at all? Or
well, I mean, that's the logical question to ask, and it doesn't appear to me that any of these legal books in the States move on their own. They're just waiting for Costa Rica offshores to move, and then they move based on that. I mean, it might be a little different when I shouldn't say they always wait for offshore, but like if there's a prop Discord community with 1,200 subscribers and everybody tries to bet the same prop, 1,000 people try to bet the same prop within 5 minutes, DraftKings or FanDuel will move on their own. But on a real market, they're not going to move. It's going to take a lot for them to move. So they're not going to move on a $4 or $50 or $100 max bet.
That would be pretty cool if they did, though.
It would be amazing.
Because you could be at the kiosk and get ready to, bet the other way.
No, exactly. I mean, I think Spanky mentioned that at Bet Bash, that he was able to make a $2 bet and move the market, or that was like a secret and he shouldn't have said it or something like that. Do you guys remember that?
I think it might have been a secret. It might have been a secret.
So like back a long time ago, I had like a 5 dimes where I got limited to like $10, and I could go into small markets and move things for $10. And then other places were actually copying them, so you could go. And I didn't have the outlets to take advantage of it as I would have liked to have, but
some people did, though.
Some people did, yes.
Yeah, we may not have, but we know there were some people that did.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I gotta imagine it's pretty hard to run a sports book, and you're gonna make mistakes like allowing very high limits on in-game betting and such.
I,
But I mean,
I
these book.
go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say I want these books to keep doing what they're doing. Like they'll learn eventually, but I'm good with the way they're running things right now. It's fun.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
we don't want. Yeah, we don't necessarily want every book to be Circa. As much as I respect and love Circa and admire them, like if every book had the staff working for them that Circa does, I mean, they're super sharp. Like they know how to move on money when they take professional action, and they're going to move it the right way, and they're tough to beat. So it's you don't want every single book to be like that. I don't think you want every book to take the limits that they take, but that's unfortunately that's not realistic right now.
So, fellas, at Bet Bash, everyone was looking for accounts. I mentioned the people that had the shirts that said "Got accounts." Does this mean that origination is just easy and you can find good plays anywhere, Mike?
I don't think people looking for accounts means it's originators in general. I mean, everybody's looking for accounts because everybody wants to bet small market stuff and
But
better.
someone has to be originating that, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's just picking off bad lines. Doesn't necessarily mean you're originating, like saying like Washington Mystics -2. It could be if you get enough of these outs, you can maybe pick off some bad numbers here and there that they're slow to move on certain markets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you could call that originating. You could call that top down. I guess would probably be a better way to describe it.
I don't think it's just originators looking for accounts. I think it's movers, and movers throw an account into a robot, and they would take 1,000 accounts if they had them available. So I don't necessarily think it's originators. I think it's more movers than anything, honestly. In terms of origination, though, like I think you're alluding to asking, is it easy to originate? And I think there's more out there because of legal. I just question, do I think someone who intimately knows baseball can beat strikeout props? You probably do that with numbers, but let's NBA, props, whatever. I just don't think those markets are sustainable long run. So I think eventually you kind of have to step up to something more widely available.
Like sides and totals of games, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all for picking the low hanging fruit. That's kind of my life. But I mean, I think when you get into college football and college basketball, not that that's like the most difficult thing in the world, but I think it takes experience, and I think it's not something most people can step into and just win at right away.
Right,
So
for sure. I mean, Mike, I didn't mean to say that, it necessarily that it was originators looking for accounts. Being at Bet Bash made it seem like getting accounts was the only thing people really cared about and didn't really care whether I could originate NFL or how good your college basketball totals are. It just made it seem like that was a more trivial aspect of the business, which, I mean, I know that it isn't. It's hard. It takes a lot of work. But I guess I'm just asking you guys, like, why there was such an emphasis on getting accounts. And
I think you had a lot of high level people there. I think it speaks to the the normal person that was at Bet Bash was a pretty successful gambler. So it's like, can I get more? Can I get more? Can I get more? I kind of feel bad. I talked to a couple of younger guys. I kind of feel bad for the younger guys who didn't really have like Bet Bash was awesome for me. I loved it, but I do think it would have been hard. Like if I put myself at age 30 at Bet Bash, I think I would have had a hard time connecting with people. Because
no,
you
I
don't
get that. I get that too. Like I feel pretty blessed to have been in this field for a decade, right? And to walk into a room and be like, "Hey, what's up?"
right,
And
and so I think the people that want the accounts are just the people who already have a name. I
they're
think
looking to scale their business as opposed to startup.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you summarized it better than I could.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, I
That
think
makes
that's
that makes a ton of sense.
yeah. Those people are just trying to scale, which that's probably a lot of the attendees of Bet Bash are trying to scale. I think a lot of them already know how to win. But like Mike said, that was like a top tier group of bettors, just generally speaking.
Yeah. Excellent. So I've asked Mike a bunch about originating on this podcast before. Mark, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you go about that.
I mean, I do more of like the top down thing when I come up with my own stuff, but like a lot of what I do is betting Mike's, the stuff that he originates, and like some spreadsheets that he's come up with over the years for derivative markets and things like that. But I also do like top down, just like I just to make it like real basic and easy. Like from back in the day, it was like Pinnacle versus Sports Interaction. This was like 10 or 12 years ago. I was like, all right, Pinnacle has this number, Sports Interaction is this number. It's blatantly obvious like who's right and who's wrong. You just pick it off like the low hanging fruit, easy to do. Well, it's not quite that cut and dry anymore. There's a lot more layers to it. I think that a lot of it has to do with narrowing down like which books know what they're doing in which markets, in which sports. So one book that we might bet into for WNBA stuff that Mike originates, I might use that same book as like my guideline or my answer key for some of my top down stuff in other markets, because I know we can beat them in WNBA, but we can't beat them in, let's just say, like NFL first halves, because I think that they're like really sharp at that. And that comes from just experience, just trying to beat certain markets over the years. And yeah, like the obvious answer, everyone's like, oh, it's like Pinnacle or Bookmaker or Circa. And that's true most of the time, but there's other ones where you'd be surprised, like, well, this particular book is actually like a little bit ahead, or like they lean a certain way in a certain market. And I guess I've just become pretty good at kind of recognizing those things. Like, I'm like, all right, whenever, and honestly, a lot of that has to, like Mike and I joke, like when we have theories about something, like we just start betting it like earlier than most people would. Like I can't sit down with a pen and paper for like weeks at a time, be like, well, I would have bet this last night in the Major League Baseball first 5 innings. Like I think this looked good, or I think this looked good based off what I did. Cause I'll just get bored of it. If I don't have money on it, like I'll just be like, I want to move on to something else. Like I'm not going to pay attention to it. So I'll just start betting it. Like I'll just be like, if I have a theory, I'll run it by Mike first. I'm like, dude, like, what do you think about this? And he's always like, just bet it. And like, I won't go crazy, but I'll bet a couple $100 or whatever. Bet a nickel. And then I start to, then in my mind, I'm kind of collecting data. I'm like, all right, well, I keep losing at this one place for whatever reason,
Right.
Maybe that book is one of the ones that I should be kind of incorporating as my, guideline answer key type places. So I'm not going to bet this market at that book anymore. I'm going to use them. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes I lose money in the process and I, on to the next project. But as I've done that over the years, like I've kind of figured out which books know what they're doing and when they move and when limits increase and when this, different things happen.
But I mean, if you're losing money there, that's gaining information, right?
Correct. Yes. And that's happened a lot where I'm like, man, like maybe I'm following somebody on Betstamp, or maybe I'm following whatever, somebody else, or maybe it's just a theory that I came up with or Mike came up with. And I'm like, man, we just can't beat this particular book in this particular market. Like we just can't do it. Well, then we just stop betting that market at that book after a certain sample size, and then we start to use that. And then, like I said, this doesn't always work, but we've gotten to the point where we can kind of gauge like what makes sense with it and like how to use that information. Yeah. And like you said, we might lose money in the process, but we gain information. And then in the long run, that kind of makes us sharper with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mike has like some of the, like I said, he has like some of these spreadsheets. Some of them he put together like 10 years ago on Excel, but it's like for derivative markets. And it's like, it still kind of like shows you which way like a certain, market is going to move. And it's still effective. And then when I combine that with a book that I think is sharp, and I'm like, wait, this book is leaning the exact same way that your sheet is, but like everybody else is like a little bit high on this, like, And again, so then, I start to bet it. And a lot of times like it kind of starts to move in the direction that I expect it to because of that. So like, and when people, like I know on other podcasts, I hear people, you hear top down, you think like steam chasing, you think like immediately like, oh, top down, like you see one book move and like, boom, like you got to hit like slam the screen because like everything's going to move. Like, I feel like that's not really what I do. Like, I don't chase steam. I'm like looking like for like signals and like I said, like an answer key, like a guideline kind of thing to be like, okay, this works because of a spreadsheet we have. This works because of certain books leaning that way. And the market may never move the direction that I think, but for the most part, we've made it work in certain markets. It definitely is effective.
Yeah,
it doesn't steam immediately. Like there was like top 10 golf, golfers to be in the top 10 that at DraftKings and other places that sat there, like that I thought were pretty good bets based off what I'm saying right now, that sat there all day long. They're probably still there right now. Like they probably just never moved, because that's how this goes sometimes.
It never moves, even though other markets have moved, right? Like the outright winners will move, but the top 10 for the same golfer won't move.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Excellent. All right, fellas, let's get on to the potentially non-sports questions that I usually like to ask. So first, besides Momofuku in Las Vegas, what is your best culinary experience? Mark, you first.
I was going to say Momofuku. No, there was a place that my wife and I went to on our honeymoon in Cinque Terre, Italy, that was just like a phenomenal little like mom and pop shop. It had this, they had this pesto gnocchi there that was just like incredible. And it was like this sauce that it was in. It was like, so we got there and there was this other couple there, like we're sitting outside. It wasn't even like one of these crowded places, like right on the water. It was like kind of tucked away, like a few blocks off of the beach. And this other couple was sitting there and they were like, we came here last night and we got the pesto gnocchi and we're back here again tonight ordering the exact same thing. It was like one of those meals, like you get it one night and you're like, I got to come back here and get this again, like as soon as possible. And I think we had to leave the next day, so I didn't get it. But honestly, if we were still there the next day, we probably would have gone back and gotten it again, because it was that good.
That's amazing. I feel like I can smell basil just from you talking about it.
It was like the end of May in Italy in Cinque Terre. Yeah, so there was some fresh ingredients in there for sure, and it was delicious.
That sounds amazing. Mike, I know I've asked you this question, but how about you? Give me another answer.
I guess my answer was so boring compared to being in Italy. I think last time I was on, I said Grill 43 in Boston. It's actually Grill 23.
Yeah, Grill 20. That was pretty awesome.
So I know we had a nice big group and we all had a lot to drink before we went, but that's probably the best steak I've ever had. So that's my answer. Grill 23, not Grill 43, like I said last time.
Yeah, Grill 23. No, I remember that very well. I remember Zach White wanted to play credit card roulette for the bill, which we didn't, because I was like, I don't know about that, guys. But that was also really interesting because I sat next to Zach and he told me his whole story about how he got started with sports betting. Like he was a college student at Appalachian State, and they started getting all these offshore accounts and getting all the bonuses, and almost a decade later, I'm listening to the same story because he's on the Risk of Ruin podcast telling the exact same story about how he got started and how sports betting came later. So I'll always remember the company of that night and kind of getting the inside details of Zach's life before he ever went public with it.
Yeah, there were a lot of interesting people at that table too. I had a friend from Boston that was there. Who's an interesting guy.
We allowed to say his name?
No.
All right. Wait, Scalley, were you there?
Right. I don't think I was there that time. No.
I feel like it was. Yeah, it was. Was it like 8 people, Mike?
Yeah, 8 or 10. I feel like we were in a semi-private area.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I
mean, Girl 23 made it into my March Madness book.
I think Rufus and his brother were there, Zach and Mad Dog, and
sounds like a great crew.
I don't remember if Matt was there, but
yeah, I think their whole betting group, like Zach and Rufus, and
yeah, there was a lot of good people there.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right. Second question: if you could have dinner with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be? And Mike, I'm gonna start with you.
So I tweeted about this because I couldn't come up with anyone, and my real answer is I would probably have it with a deceased relative just to see them one more time. But I don't know. A grandparent maybe, because my parents are still alive and everything. But my entertainment answer, I named like 10 names last time, but I realized that John Daly needs to be my person. Um, because I don't know, 6 bags of peanut M&Ms, 21 cigarettes, and 12 Diet Cokes, and all the stories of all the drinking stories. I just think it would be awesome. So
I mean, he would just have some wild stories about just golf and being a pro in general, right?
you would
Drinking beers with him.
drink me under the table, but
Yeah.
I could probably hang for 3 or 4 hours, I would think. But well, maybe not that long with him. I could probably hang for a few hours, but I feel like it would be awesome for the time that I was able to stay coherent.
I mean, there's a lot of people who can drink like that. Why John Daly in particular? I mean, why not?
Because I like people who drink and gamble, and John Daly does both of those things.
All right,
That's a great answer.
that is a fantastic answer. Mark, how about you?
I had to think about this one a lot because it's a very good question, and I knew you were going to ask it. Obviously, I think I have to go with Anthony Bourdain.
Oh wow!
I mean, first of all, like, he's gonna get whatever the best possible dish is in that restaurant because the chef's gonna come out and make sure he prepares it the right way for Bourdain. But just like he's a similar guy, like just drinking beers with him. Like I feel like he could be drinking Budweisers or he could be drinking like the fanciest French wine that there is, but he would just be an awesome person to just kind of pick his brain about everything, traveling and being in New York City in the 70s and the bands that he saw, the music, the people that he's met, the restaurants, the chefs, just traveling around the world. Like, I feel like drinking beers and eating food with Anthony Bourdain or drinking wine or whatever it is would be an incredible experience. Just listen to him tell his stories.
Have you seen Roadrunner, the documentary about him?
You know what? I think you mentioned that to me at dinner that night, actually, Momofuku, right? Maybe that was in the back of my mind. I was like, I got to go Bourdain because Ed and I talked about him. But you mentioned it to me, but I got to watch it.
It's incredible. It's incredibly sad. So I watched it on the flight to Las Vegas, and it's long. I want to say like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And it's really good in the beginning. Tells a story about how he wrote the book and got famous, and then that led directly to his TV career. And then at some point it kind of gets boring and you're like, do I want to stick out the last 30? I kind of know how this ends.
Yeah.
But the end is so sad when, well, spoiler,
I think I know how it ends.
he commits suicide and it's, the way they tell it is just so sad because he like just could not get off like the hamster wheel of fame.
Right.
And he kind of let that dominate his life, and that just led to dark places for him. And then you get like the beautiful young girlfriend, and that, just really messed with his head, as it probably would for, any male in his situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was in tears or almost in tears by the end of that movie. It was really moving.
For some reason, it's funny. That's the name you came up with because someone quoted that on my Facebook, Anthony Bourdain, today. So I actually was looking up his story just this afternoon. So
my wife said the same thing to me today. She was like, it's one of those, because I think I texted her something today that I was going to say Bourdain for that answer tonight. And then she responded like an hour later. She's like, of course, this just came up on my Facebook because like, Facebook knows everything. But if it came up in yours too, then who knows? Maybe it was just like, I don't know, just going viral today or whatever.
Or they just know that you guys were.
Yeah, that too. Maybe Facebook knows even more than we think. And they knew that Craig and I were going to be on this podcast tonight.
Yeah. Mark, what about music in the 70s that's so interesting to you? Like, is there something?
I almost said Mick Jagger or Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones for this answer, because that would be phenomenal as well. And again, just hanging out with those guys, drinking beers, chatting about music. I don't know, like I don't play any instruments at all, but I've always just loved music, and it's just been like something I'm really passionate about. Just, classic rock, especially, like I said, like the Stones and Led Zeppelin and the Grateful Dead and bands like that. I'm just a big music fan in general, but I can't play worth a lick. Never tried really, but I just love listening and learning about it and hearing stories about it and stuff.
Awesome. Mark Scalley.
I think Bourdain would be a good person to chat with about, 70s rock. I think he would have a lot to say.
I think he would have a lot to say about everything. Like,
yeah, sure.
I mean, I love fine cuisine, and probably no one in the world knew more about it than him.
Right.
Just his experiences around the world. I think that alone would give me reason to want to hang out with the dude. But sadly, sadly, no one has a chance. So, well, I guess with this question, the person
That's true. This question gave us that opportunity.
And I never watched the show that he had on CNN.
Oh no,
no, but he did. Some whiskey company paid him to do like these short documentaries on YouTube, and they were incredible. I'll have to find a link to it.
Yeah.
I forget who the whiskey maker was, but he went around to like all these interesting people and interviewed them, and it was really good.
Yeah, send me the link when you have a minute.
Yeah, no, I'll put it. I'll send it to you, and then I'll put it in the notes here. It was really good. So,
okay, sweet.
Mark Scalley, Mike Craig, thank you so much for coming on and talking about sports betting and getting accounts. This is where I ask you guys to tell people where they can find you on the internet. Mike, I'll start with you.
Twitter, MJC257.
Awesome. And Mark?
I had to look mine up because I haven't tweeted anything in like ever. I think it's Jimmy the Gent 2. Jimmy the Gent, the number 2. That's a reference to Goodfellas, De Niro's character. Jimmy, I don't know. I made this account in 2009, and that's what I came up with at that time. I mean, I still love Goodfellas. It's a fantastic movie. But yeah, that's for whatever reason, that's my Twitter handle. I never really tweet, though. I just follow. I'm on Twitter all the time following people and reading things, but I don't send any tweets out.
You have 0 tweets in your life.
Maybe I have to start. Maybe I should start. That was like you until 6 months ago, though, Craig. Similar.
And I only have like 10 since then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, the John Daly tweet at me was 1 of 10?
Yeah. I've tweeted. Yeah. I've tweeted about you, or I've thrown your name out there a few times, Ed. So.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely tweeted some of the pods that you've been on with me. And then there was a bet in there too. Pretty sure I bet that.
Yeah, I think I put some college football plays.
Yeah, you put a couple. You put a couple plays in there at some point.
I don't like putting plays out there, but
I presume if people have accounts, they can find you guys on Twitter for that as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, send us a message.
All right, fellas, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, thank you, Ed. Thank you very much for having me on, and yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate it.
Hey, this is Ed Fang, host of the Football Analytics Show. I hope you learned as much from that interview with Mark Scalley and Mike Craig as I did. I know I certainly had a good time talking to those two guys and their long-time experience in the sports betting world. Just a reminder, if you want to get smarter about sports betting in under 5 minutes, sign up for my free email newsletter. You can get this free service at thepowerrank.com. Once again, that's my site for better sports betting information. That's thepowerrank.com. If you are new to the Football Analytics Show and like what you hear, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. New episodes will automatically appear when they are released. Also, can I ask a favor? Can you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts? This helps me spread the word about the show. You can subscribe by searching The Football Analytics Show on Apple Podcasts. When you find the podcast, click on it. You can subscribe by pressing on the subscribe button to get all the awesome football analytics stuff I have in store over the next couple of months. To leave a rating and review, scroll down past the first few episodes. Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Ed Fang, your host, and I will talk to you again soon.